Okay, we're going to continue on today. Throughout this whole presentation of Chan Masters, I didn't go chronologically through all of the masters. What I did was I wanted to touch upon what the role of as a Chan Master is, someone who's presenting, so that we may know what the role is as a student as to what to listen to. The task of the presenter is something that should not be taken very lightly. It's something that is actually a matter of life and death. And so whatever is presented to the students has to be something of value. Not only that, but it has to be something that they don't know. Otherwise, why would you present it? It would just be like going and it would be like one of these rock bands from the 60s or 70s, and they only had one hit. And you'd be playing My Sharona every single time when you played, because that's all you did. You had the one hit. But that's not the way that we practice. What we practice is we spread it around and we see all of the commonalities that are there. And that this is what was the heritage of the Chan practice, was all from all of these masters. What was the tune that they were playing? But then we take our way of playing it. And each time we do that, we play it in a different way so that the people don't have to just listen to the same thing. If they didn't get it the first time, why would they get it the second time? By saying exactly the same thing. What's more important then is that what we really have to do is really to penetrate the sutras, penetrate the lecture, so that we can present that to the audience in a meaningful way, in a way in which we use our heart to present. And it is what we're hoping is that they do not listen to the words. They don't listen to the phrases, but they listen to the heart. They try to tune in this way. And this is what we're talking about, this of the masters that comes through is that as they begin to practice and their practice has reached maturation, which is mentioned many times in the sutras about a person's practice reaching this maturation, fully matured, there is that interest in the bodhicitta. And in the bodhicitta, the masters no longer practice or study for themselves. What they do is that they practice for the basis of others, and they transfer merit for the basis of others. But they also are reading to say, maybe I can use this as a door to go through. It is why they say that there's 84,000 obstructions, but 84,000 doors to the Dharma, because there's all these different ways that we can knock upon the door. And then we talk about the door and say, what is this door? And even Chan doesn't give that to you. They talk about a gateless gate. Well, what's a gateless gate? It just brings you back to the idea of the ekayana, just this mind. And so all the way through, there is this theme of just this mind. And but if you hold on to just this mind, they will tell you no mind. So that there's nothing that you can fundamentally base your practice on in terms of words. So the true and proper understanding that the masters talk about is that there are no words that can deliver you. So then what does a master talk about? What can they say to you that will help you? It is in the practice. It is this aspect of Chan, which is engaged. It is exactly a mirror of the manner in which the Chan practice works, or the mind works, is that it is engaged. it is illuminated. It is in the present moment. It is aware. It is contemplating the arising of nature within its own self-nature. This is the part that gives many, many people a cause for confusion, because they want to polish this aspect of consciousness to make it better, to do that. But it isn't in that way. It is functioning perfectly. The only thing that we don't know is because we don't have true and proper understanding. We miss that. We miss that the consciousness that is arising in the mind is transitory. It's temporary. But that which in where it is appearing is not other than mind. Our problem is that we don't see it from the proper perspective. We see it from the perspective of a self. And as a result, we paint everything with the idea of a self rather than turning it around so we see it from the mind's perspective. This is all the way through from the beginning. We have seen that this is what the refrain is of these masters. And our job is to try to make this something that is a correct and proper understanding. Last week, we talked about wall gazing and the idea of Biguan. And the master at that time, we were talking about Sen Chao, which was a contemporary of Bodhidharma, who was a Chinese master who talked about Biguan, or this wall gazing. And Bodhidharma also had this in terms of it, and it served as the fundamental aspect of the practice of Chan. But in this way, there was an emphasis on meditation, but not the emphasis so much on crossing your legs. And this was something Master Sheng Yen was always admonishing people, especially going to a retreat, to say, are you going to practice your legs? Or are you going to practice the Dharma? And people were going, because he was actually referring to the advanced students that had been able to overcome the physical discomfort and could sit there. And many people would sit there like stone lions. I mean, it's very, very incredible. They would not move at all. But inside, there was no practice. Either there was an ability to shut off the senses or completely blank the mind. But upon rising, their actions did not reflect that there was a true and proper understanding. Some, yes, some others, no. But the master is there to guard against people just simply falling into these false states of anesthetizing the mind and thinking that this is it. Well, if I can sit for 2 hours, well, that's good. If I can sit for 3 hours without getting up, I'm great. But really, is that what the practice is? And so we have to constantly be vigilant to make sure that the students do not fall into these kinds of situations, and to see exactly what is it that they're practicing when they're sitting. So Bodhidharma came upon the two types of practice, one of principle and one of practice. And the principle was to understand how the mind worked. Now, through all of the practices and predating Chan, there was this aspect of how mind worked. And we've talked about it before. The Abhidharma, which the Theravadins had a version, and then Mahayana had a version of the Abhidharma, was really a template as to how mind worked, how emotions arose, how mental impressions arose, why they arose, what were they connected to. So one began to see a schematic of mind. It's very, very interesting. It's very humbling to practice something like the Abhidharma or the Yogacara school, which also produce their own schematic of mind, simply because it requires a lot of attention and it requires a lot of contemplation. One cannot just simply read it and then get it. Maybe if you read it 50 times, eventually the mind will absorb it. But it does require that kind of an effort to be able to penetrate it. But penetrating in this way, then one begins to see the machinations of the mind, and then sees in some way how the mind functions and how it reacts in certain ways. But at that point, then we do not attribute any of that to my mind or your mind or whatever. We just see that this is the machine part. And the danger of all of that is then we begin to look for the ghost in the machine. And that is a danger, because then we begin to look at it in a way in which we think that there's something there. It's not all of these appearances, but it's still something, let's say a spirit, a soul, a personality, but of a higher level. And but it isn't in that way. And that's why the Shurangama Sutra went to great pains to correct Ananda about all of his ideas as to where he believed that the mind resided. And even to the point where he finally says, I see it, it functions in this way, and it's essentially at this higher state. And that's when the Buddha yelled at him and said, Ananda, that's not your mind. To what is? That's where the words depart. And we have to go beyond that. And when I say we, it is the practicing mind that goes beyond that. If we try to drag Gilbert along with us, then it just slows us down. We may get there eventually where finally it's something where Gilbert says, go on without me, I'm lost. You go. And maybe you can make it at that point. When I say you, we're not talking about an individual you. And that's where the problem is, and all of this, and in being able to explain things, because we explain things in the convention of language and words and phrases. But it is something that all of the Chan masters are introducing you to a different perspective, the perspective of the mind. And in the perspective of the mind, you have to be able to set the table to be able to penetrate this. So when we look at this and we look at the practices of Bodhidharma, then you begin to understand what should be our attitude and orientation of the practice. He says the first is that one who practices overcomes the karmic determined feelings of hatred and passion carried over from previous existences. And this is interesting, because when I read this, when it says previous existences, I was thinking, don't think that it's a previous existence from a previous lifetime. The very last thought that you attach to then creates the confusion of an existence. So anytime you've attached to a thought, that creates a previous existence. It's not that you look towards your past lifetime. Many people are always looking, and they're going to some fortune teller or someone. I want to know what I was in the past, as if that will help them to understand now. But our wisdom dictates we just simply have to be in the present, understanding that the present is not truly a present. So we don't look at it in this way of temporal time period of anything. We just let the mind abide in the present, understanding that there's no abiding there. This is where the words leave off, and our true and proper understanding allows us to settle the mind in this way without thinking, wait, this is a contradiction. This doesn't make sense. Gilbert, go away, run as fast as you can. This is too scary. It's going to be the end of you. But if you calm the mind, let go of the self, then one can look at this in this way, overcome these karmic forces that are there, that bring up passions in us, whether it's the passions of desire or the passions of discrimination, of hatred, whatever it is, we let go of those. How do we let go of them? We don't cast them out. This is probably the biggest mistake that people can make. Again, this is true and proper understanding of what is happening, but also of what the practice is. All we do is we illuminate it. We illuminate, and there is this illumination from the mind's perspective that is not involved in cogitation, in thinking. This is the part that's a little bit difficult for us, because as we try to do this, consciousness and cogitation slips back in. So we have to have this delicate balance of being able to be aware without creating further attaching thoughts or attaching patterns. And this is a very subtle practice. It's not something that's going to be there and announce itself like a big brass band marching in and saying, we're clearing the whole area here and only listen to this sound. It is saying, settle down, settle. Thoughts are arising, emotions arising, these vexing passions, which Yogacarans call klesis, they're arising. Let them arise, let them go. We don't have to push them out, or we don't have to do anything. The process of illumination by mind does not present a fertile ground for these passions to grow. So if you really want to do this, if you really want to practice Chan, you have to practice with this true and proper understanding. And that's all the masters are always saying, was just this. So you look at it and you say, okay, we have to let go of all of these passions that arise. We let go by virtue of illuminating them, nothing more. Simply illuminating them. Once we illuminate them, then they will go away. And it's kind of like if you went into your kitchen and you turned on the lights, if there was a mouse there, the mouse would immediately run out. It could not stand that illumination. And so we sooner or later, the more illumination is there, it will not provide a fertile ground for that mouse to stay in your kitchen. Eventually, they're going to go to somebody else's kitchen that's dark and has a bunch of junk there that's left over from all the passions of whatever the people had, maybe a bag of corn chips on the counter or whatever. But we don't leave anything there because we don't abide in any place. We don't abide in the idea of a life and being or a self. So in that illumination, the constant illumination of the mind, all of these vexing passions on their own will dissipate. We don't have to tell them to leave right now, march out of here, simply because it is our own mind. So the pressure's off. We put the pressure on ourselves to try to practice in a certain way. Without this kind of a pressure, then the practice is easier. So first we overcome these karmic obstructions. Understand where they come from. You put them there. You put you there. Contemplate that. You put you there. You are being viewed. You cannot understand. You being self. We don't have to negate self. As I mentioned before, anatman means not self, not no self, but not self. So we don't point and say, well, where's Gilbert? Oh, he's over there. And they say, oh, that's not really him. So he has to leave. Where is he going to go? He's made of the fabric of mind. So he's there, and he has that kind of a credential that he's part of mind. So we do not negate the existence of Gilbert. We just know that Gilbert is not mine. And so it is the proper understanding of how we look at things. If you follow along with me today, you will find that everything that I've been saying is things that I've read this entire week of these different masters. We may or may not get to them today, but what's important is the echoes of what they're saying. Their sentiments are in the words that I'm saying, the admonitions to you, and the instructions on how to practice, how to view in the proper way. We get to the second practice, and it says, one submits to one's circumstances. And it's like saying, you accept where you're at, whatever you're doing. Some of you say, I cannot practice meditation because I cannot sit with my legs crossed. Well, that's been my condition for a while, but nevertheless, I can still meditate. I can still contemplate. I can still practice all the time. One accepts the conditions, whatever they are. If one is sick, one is healthy, one has a good spouse, a bad spouse, a good child, a bad child, a good animal, pet, or a bad one, a good job, bad job. You accept those things and you understand it. Doesn't mean that you can't change it, but you accept it. I remember Shifu once told a story about this lady that came to see him, and she said, Shifu, I really have a problem, that I need your help with. And he says, you need me to help you? He said, no, not me. She says, I want you to help my husband. What's wrong with him? And she said, well, he's always angry. And so he says, well, how often is he angry? All the time. And then Shifu changed it on her and said, that's wonderful news. She goes, wait, you didn't hear me. I said that my husband is always mean to me. He's always angry at me, always calling me names. And Shifu said, that's wonderful news. And she said, what are you talking about? None of that makes sense. And he says, no, people are always looking for the way to practice, and you have a daily reminder of how to practice, how to let go. Now, understand, if she was being beaten by the person or something along those lines, that, the advice would be different. But here, it's just somebody that has a difficulty with their spouse. And I'm sure none of you have ever had difficulty with your spouses, ever, or vice versa. They've never do that. Everybody who's never had difficulty with spouses, raise your hands right now. Yeah, that's what I thought. So, David, are you a bachelor? Well, there it is. So in any case, when we do this, we see things clearly. And that's what Shifu was saying, is accept the situation that you have. Recently, one of my students was saying that their brother had contracted stage 4 cancer. What advice can you give him? So think about it. What would you give advice to somebody that has stage 4 cancer? It's different than what you give advice to others. You cannot say to them, well, everything's impermanent, hasta la vista, baby, you're gone. That's not going to work. There's no compassion, there's no understanding. But it's a matter of slowly presenting useful Dharma to people to be able to get them to see the situation. And then also this is something actually beneficial because it gives you a time to prepare. Whereas other people, if they die of a heart attack, they don't have time to prepare. I think Robert, I don't know if he's here today, recently had a stroke. If he died at that point, he wouldn't have had time. But now he's got extra time to kind of measure things and measure what's valuable, what's important in terms of things, and measure this breath. This one counted. And what can you do with this breath? What can you do with this body? All of these things we look at. So we accept our situation. We accept where we're at, and we're doing that. It's not like I look at it and go, oh, I got to give a class in 5 minutes. I guess it's time to get out of bed. No, I understand that. I've been studying all week. I studied this morning, and right up to the moment when I turned on the camera. That's just the way it is. So you accept the situation. You understand this is your function, and you do it well. Not bad. You don't have to gauge yourself or do anything and say, why me, or whatever. It is what it is. And you practice your best. The third one is to ask for nothing, since all things are empty. Very interesting. So we don't have to ask for anything. It's like we want to sit on Mila Fo's lap, the Mila Fo for the Westerners is the Buddha that now appears to be very, very corpulent. And we want to ask, what do you want for your birthday? Well, Mila Fo, can you make me enlightened? Can you do this? You don't have to ask for anything. What is important and vital in the practice of Chan, in the practice of Buddhism, is it's already there. You already have it. You have what's called the wish-fulfilling gem, the Mani Pearl. Right now, if you wish, what do I want? And there's all sorts of different things that people want. They may want a new car. They may want a better job, $1 million in the bank, whatever it is, what they want. But that's out of ignorance, because they don't understand. The wish-fulfilling gem not only grants your wishes, but it grants you the wisdom to know what to wish for. And that's what's important. So we don't wish for this or wish for that. We are clear about what we wish for. And in this way, we understand we already have it. It's not easy for us to do that, because we go, well, this Dharma book's not going to pay the electric bill or the cell phone bill or whatever it is. And so there's a dissatisfaction there in our life, something that we're missing. Even the rich people have desires and things that they wish for. Although they have quite a bit, they still are wishing for something. And if it was one thing, they want something better, finer, something not 14 karat gold, 18 karat gold. They want 24 karat gold, because this is the pattern. But imagine that if you have already no desires of this way, and if you have no desires in the practice, but simply to practice, then the doors open up on their own for wisdom. Because now you've let go of all of these things that are there. A long time ago, I saw this program on TV, kind of one of those National Geographic one, and it was about this African tribe, and they figured out how to catch monkeys in the wild. And what they would do, hold on a second here. Very interesting. They would have a gourd like this, and with a very narrow opening here, and they place a nut at the bottom of the gourd. And monkeys would come along and smell the nut at the bottom of the gourd. And so they would stick their hand in and then grab the nut with their fist. But when they tried to pull it out through this narrow opening here, they could not do that. As much as they tried, if they tried to run away with the gourd, it was tied to a stake and a tether. So they could not go very far. And they showed the native people walking up to the monkeys, and the monkeys are still pulling and pulling and pulling. And their fear of losing the nut was greater than them being captured. And the latter part of the program was showing that they had this monkey on a rotisserie stick over a fire being cooked. It is how we get trapped. We don't want to let go of this life, but letting go of this life or letting go of these things ensures that we're trapped. And so when we practice in this way, looking for something, then that ignorance blocks us from the wisdom. You would think that monkey would say, let go of that. I value my life. But no, valuing the possessions that were there was more valuable. And it was a real shocker to me when I saw that, because I was thinking, wow, do we do that too? And this was a long time ago. I remember I was still just barely out of college and looking at this and going, how can that be? But it shocked me into thinking, am I that way? Can I be that way of wanting to hold on to this? Perhaps wanting to hold on to drinking alcohol or taking drugs or risking my life all the time in whatever dangerous adventures I would do. Are those things more valuable? And you look at the world in this way. It's very, very strange. So when we let go of those things, it enables us to practice, because it sets the mind, opens the mind from the constriction of desire, of wanting. And then the fourth one, it says, one finds oneself in harmony with the Dharma. In this, so this aspect of being in harmony with the Dharma means that, and this is with a big D, so it has to do with scripture, sutras, treatises, is that we read the Dharma, right? But are we in harmony with it? Sometimes you'll read something and it says, okay, don't do this one. And you turn to the next page because it's reflecting something about yourself. You don't want to be and worried about you're in harmony with the Dharma. So you move on to the next thing. You say, I'll practice that later on. But right now, let me look for more nuggets. But it is not this way. We need to practice. We need to be honest. It's not easy. I'm not somebody that I could tell you, oh, Gilbert, he is a bodhisattva of the highest degree. No, I'm a practitioner. But we always are trying to become in harmony with the Dharma, how it's practiced. It does not mean that we look for the Dharma to absorb enlightenment from the words and the phrases, but through the practice of it, it leads to the awakening. So when we practice in this way with all of these, fundamentally, it is what all of the Chan masters have been saying from early on, even before Bodhidharma. But Bodhidharma puts this out there, and the Chan masters are in accord with this. And I wanted to read you another aspect of this, which is very, very interesting. And bear in mind, I've only read about 5 lines of the different books I was going to talk about today, but it's not necessary to move on. This can be very helpful if you understand where to practice. So in this one, let me read a little bit of this. And this is coming from the book entitled Zen Buddhism, A History of India and China from Dumoulin, which is kind of an older scholar. But nevertheless, there's some good material that he has in there in terms of source material. And he was saying, the calming of the mind, the second element of wall gazing. So when we looked up and we said that we have to just kind of calm the mind, recalls the story of enlightenment of Huiko. According to the transmission, Huiko called upon the Buddha, who was seated in meditation, and asked him how he might calm his mind. Now, you all know this story, or I imagine 90% of you know this story. Pay attention, though. There's a twist here, okay? A very, very subtle twist in terms of that. So Huika goes to him and says, how do I calm the mind? Bodhidharma turned to him and said, bring me your mind and I will set it free. So Huika replied that, try as he might, he could not find it. At this, the Bodhidharma spoke again. Your mind is free. As Yanagita notes, Yanagita was a Japanese historian and Buddhist scholar. This exchange, the oldest of its kind in Zen history to come down to us, has a contemporary ring to it. So this is him in his book writing. This is a quote. Huiko has asked the Bodhidharma for a method to free the mind, not for an ontological principle. So he's not asking Bodhidharma, what does this mean? Where does mind come from? What is mind? He's saying, by the way, do you know a way that I can free my mind? And it just has too many thoughts coming in, too many things. And I just can't settle myself. So he's asking him not for a definition, but for a method of how to do that. How do you do that? Bodhidharma sets the mind of Huiko free. How? By his interlocutor firmly into view in an original and fundamental sense. So what he's saying is he's giving him the probe to find the mind. If we're going to get rid of the mind, we have to find it, right? So it's like as if one had the mouse in the house, and we say we need to get rid of the mouse. what would be the first thing that you'd have to do? Pretty obvious, right? Find the mouse. If you don't find the mouse, you can't take them out. So Damo presented to Hueca, look for it. And so as he began to look for it, and so he's saying in an origin or fundamental sense, where does it come from? What is this? First, you have to know, what is this mind that you're looking for? What is it? And so you have to know from where it comes. Is there a hole in the wall that enables it to come in? And then is it really real? And so you have to look sincerely. You have to put your efforts into this investigation. This is not something idle. This is not something that Bodhidharma said, actually, you don't really have a mind, your mind is free. That would have done Hueca no good whatsoever. What Bodhidharma said was, this is how you should do it. This is the method. This is contemplating the mind, looking into the mind. Not a definition, but a method. And so he said, though freed, there is no mind that has been freed. Though sought, there is no mind to be found. The mind is beyond grasp. And so in this first koan that comes up in Chan, it says that the essence, and so this prefigures the essence and the formation of the Chan school. So what is the essence? Is investigating mind, contemplating mind, looking into mind, not self, but mind itself. How does this come about? The practice of Abhidharma, the Yogacaran school, the Madhyamika school, they all use their methods to do that. Chan looks at it and says, they're all pointing to something that is not necessarily concrete, and they have their different ways of looking at it. But when you look at this and say it's not real, it's not consciousness, it's neither apparent nor absolute, then what is it that we do? And they're saying it is not a thing, it is the action of the contemplation into mind. When you're sitting on your cushion in a retreat setting or at home, and your mind is not on contemplation, you're wasting your time. Go and watch the Dancing with the Stars or whatever is on TV, because you're wasting your time on the cushion. You have to be contemplating. Contemplating is not cogitation. You're not sitting there pondering. Contemplation is the acceptance of mind within the parameters of the words and phrases from the Dharma. You're in harmony with that, and sitting in harmony with that without thought. But nevertheless, there's activity there. It is illuminated. It is not dead. The illumination is mind itself. When mind is left to its own device, it is bared from all of the karmic constructions. It illuminates. It's always illuminating. We just don't see it. It is as if one was standing right next to a light post, but we're on the other side of a telephone booth, so we cannot see the light because the telephone booth prevents us from seeing that light. But it doesn't say that the light isn't there, that's illuminating equally. It's just from the causes and conditions. If we step out into the light, it illuminates. Not only does it illuminate, but it illuminates right through that telephone booth And we see that telephone booth was never anything different. But we have to step out. We have to step out of the darkness, of the obscurity that arises from holding on to the thoughts of a personality, a life and being. We let go of that. That was the admonition of the Diamond Sutra. Forget about those things. Just if one is there, and if we're wall gazing, biguan, everything we see is mind. Clearly, it's mind. So the wondrous nature of mind is being revealed moment to moment to moment. We don't see it. We see it as, hooray, my team won, or boo, I lost my job, or whatever it is, my car won't start, or all sorts of different things that can come up in your mind. And we're trapped in that. Rather than let go, you let go. It doesn't mean that Gilbert won't have a headache today, or slip and fall, or whatever could happen. Those things can happen, and they do happen. But it means that we put everything into a perspective. And this is what's really important for us in terms of how we practice. So it says, the mind is free, excuse me. I'm sorry. So he says, for Yanan Gita, it is important Bodhidharma's answer understood correctly and fully. The patriarch knows of no way to liberation of the mind, but can only claim mind is free. The mind is freed here and now. It is the original pure mind, the true self of and Buddha nature. Thus presented, Bodhidharma's method of meditation is the translation into the praxis of the Mahayana doctrine of wisdom, which is the Prajnaparamita Sutra. So what that meant was that this exchange between him and Hueca then served as the fundamental presentation of the Chan Doctrine. What is the fundamental presentation of the Chan Doctrine? Investigating mind. It comes down to this. If you are not an investigating mind, I don't care how many sutras you read, it's still not going to get there because you're not doing this in the right way. You might as well have the book upside down, because all you can do is become a better citizen. But you cannot penetrate because there's no illumination there. You are not using the right end. You are still involved in the cogitation of mind versus the true practice of illuminating the mind. By its own nature, it's illuminated. And so it comes to this right there, implicit, it is already there. So it wasn't saying, I have, freed your mind. It's just simply saying this method brings about the liberation from illusion. There was never any independent life and being there. It's just mind. But we have to look at this very, very carefully. Okay. I'm going to switch for a moment. We have a little bit of time. So this is Matsu. And as a monk asked, what is Buddha? And Matsu replied, mind is Buddha. And monk asked, does mind have defilements? Very interesting, right? Does mind have defilements? What do you think? Does mind have defilements? If somebody asked you, does mind have defilements? What are you going to say? All of you who rely so much on the sutras, or can parrot the words, Robert, what would you say in that moment? Are you going to put your finger up? Yeah. And so does mind have defilements? So Matsu said, defilements by their own nature drop off. So does mind have defilements or not, based on what Matsu said? Does anybody know what he means by this? Defilements by their own nature drop off. Nobody know? This is where we start, climbing up the mountain. Okay. So you heard the words, rah, rah, rah. Okay, let's do this. Now this is where the heavy lifting comes in. So he's presented, does mind have defilements? What would you think? Does it have? If we say that mind has defilements, then we could say, well, does that mean that it's impure? And if we, or that it has, and if we say that the defilements are not there, then we'd say, then where do they appear? They appear outside of mind. That would be a duality. So it's not so easy. But this interrogation is going directly to the heart of the matter. Not so easy to respond to this. So why did he say that defilements by their own nature drop off? Now, I don't have the luxury of time to be able to grill you guys on this today, although I would find that much more beneficial than giving you the answer or the perceived answer. But when he's saying defilements by their own nature drop off, would one then say, aha, defilements have their own nature? Is that really what he's saying? What do you think? Is that what he's saying? What is he saying here? Defilements by their own nature drop off. Is now Matsu incorrect? I'll give you a hint. He wouldn't be incorrect, or he wouldn't have printed this in this book. So what does that mean? Nobody? Hi. He's saying, what is the nature of defilements? I heard somebody cough or something. Was that the answer? So what is the nature of defilements?
Impermanence.
Impermanence? Where does the impermanence come from?
Buddha nature.
Buddha nature. So he's saying these defilements, without saying existent or non-existent, but saying by their nature drop off. Meaning he doesn't say that they are non-existent, but just saying the function of mind. This is very, very precise. That's why it's in this book. It's very precise. It's clear because we don't have to negate the defilements. Those defilements we use to practice. They're not other than the Buddha mind, but as you say, they're impermanent, they're transient. But that is the manner in which the Buddha nature is. A monk asked, then, do you mean that we shouldn't cut them off? So now he's trying to go around it and say, you mean that we don't try to practice morality. So he's approaching it from the Shenshu Northern School, saying that we have to always be vigilant to cut off these kinds of bad practices and practice in the right way. That's why this is being approached here to show a different one. And so then the Matsu says, cutting off defilements is called the second vehicle. Whap. So he kind of gives them a slap, saying that what we cut off, that's like if you have to do something, then okay, do that, but it's not really the way that it should be done. And it reminds me about what in terms of actions and laws and proper conduct, there's the interpretation that we don't need the law. Proper conduct via wisdom will comport in a harmonious way to the society. Laws are there to prohibit something simply so that we can maintain order in the society. But with the wisdom, we do not need the law. But the law's there. That's the thing to keep people honest, or keep them from using their dishonesty to harm others. That's the second vehicle. It's not the first vehicle. The first vehicle is just manifesting wisdom in the present moment. So when defilements do not arise, this is called nirvana. So nirvana is letting go of these defilements. One just sees the things there as they are, and we're clear about it. And the mind comports to that. Do defilements arise in the mind? They arise in mind, but maybe in that portion of mind, you are not adding to those defilements. A monk asked, how does one sit in meditation and observe purity? So how do we then sit in meditation and observe this purity? And Matsu said, there being neither pollution nor purity, why do you need to assume a posture of observing purity? And again, this is a reaffirmation of what he just said, because this person didn't get it. But it is important and vital to our practice of meditation that we don't sit in meditation to observe purity. I want to clean my mind. I want to make it pure. I want to think only of good thoughts when I sit to meditate. This is not the way. This is the second level, not the highest level. The highest level is simply contemplate mind. If something arises, we know that. We sever the mind that desires continuation. We are aware of the thoughts that are arising in mind. We don't have to do anything more than illuminate them. The awareness of a thought is not cogitation. The awareness is that the mind is aware that something has arisen without distancing itself from it or becoming intimate with it. It is just aware that it is in the mental environment, has arisen. It is aware that it is arisen from karma, from habitual tendencies, and lets it go. And that this is the practice, is maintaining the awareness. Maintaining the awareness is not cogitation. This is subtle. This is very subtle. But if you cannot meditate in this way, you will not be able to make progress. You will be able to block the mind from thought, enter into a dark samadhi, but you're not going to enter into an illuminated samadhi. When you get up off the cushion, all is for naught, because there is no wisdom that is being manifested. We manifest wisdom until we get to Anyatara Samyak Sambodhi, this highest perfected wisdom, which is in fact no wisdom whatsoever, because it is just mind itself. It is just abiding in mind without abiding in anything. Mind is mind. And if we say, mind is mind, then I would say to you, no mind. There is no mind there. What? But it is in this way. It is my responsibility to continually correct you, to keep taking anything that you're holding on to as a reliance, take it away, so that the only thing that is left is mine. Not any kind of a semblance of a perfected soul or ego or personality or a life and being. It's just simply mine. But you're like that with that monkey, holding on to that and rather going to your death instead of letting go. The difficult part is how to let go, because I see so many of you, so wonderful practitioners, and you're there. I always tell you, you're dancing around the edge, yet you just don't want to jump in. There's just something holding you back, but you don't have to let it hold you back. Just plunge in, really. Just go like this, and jump in, or hold yourself like that and jump in. It doesn't matter what position you are. You're not going to be graded on your jump. Just jump and let go. This was what all from the beginning, the ancient Chan masters have been imploring you to do. So please practice in this way. Thank you very much for letting me do this. This is not necessarily an easy topic when one takes it seriously and tries to present something sincerely to you that can be of a benefit, rather than simply a cavalcade of all the different masters and what they said. That does you no good. I tried to bring to you their heart. Okay, omitofo.
All right. Thanks, Master Gilbert, for today's wonderful talk. Now is the Q&A section. Please raise your hand if you want to ask a question, and then we will promote to you on your microphone. And we do see the Robert. You do raise your hand. You want to ask a question?
Yes. Thank you, Gilbert. When you talk about the defilement a moment ago, it reminds me, I think there was a example long time ago. You use practice like a Teflon cooking pan, a Teflon pan that we use to fry an egg. And I mean, it's like that reminds me of course, the nature of the Teflon. I mean, we're often trying to, everybody know a Teflon doesn't stick, it just slides off. And the practice is not being aware of the thoughts. All the thoughts is trying to land on this plate or this flat object. It's going to stick to it. But practice is practice of the non. When you mention about the monkey, the non-grasping, the non. It's like holding on to it. We always try to holding on. It's almost literally like if you practice like a Teflon plate, you're aware something stick on it, and the awareness automatically, almost like it alerts you, hey, time to let go, time to let it slide off the plate. And as times go, you pretty much have to let go of the Teflon plate. There's nothing else to land on.
Let me correct you a little bit. We don't let go, we illuminate. And by its own nature, that's what what Master Matsu was saying, by its own nature, it will fall off. So that Teflon coating is the mind itself, and its functioning, and its clear functioning, it will fall off. The thing is that as we illuminate it, we do not create fertile grounds for that to reappear in the future. So whatever is the obstruction, it'll appear less frequently and less intense because we're simply illuminating that. So this is again a tiny subtle twist that means the difference between life and death.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Okay. Jack.
The next one is Nina from Michigan.
Lena.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go, Lena.
Yeah. So I have a question. Thank you for the wonderful teaching. Yeah. Yesterday I got a chance to learn a radiating metta meditation, and this is the first time I did that. And during the practice, the mind was bright and calm, and a word "who" naturally came up, and it was like a hua to. So asking who was doing radiating metta. So I asked who, and no response, and who, no response, and all was just awareness and silence. So I found out that the hua to, who, is like a pointer, point to the state of mind. So my main practice is the silent illumination, and I found out that both method actually try to illuminating the mind. So can you comment on this? Both method, there's some commonality between these two methods.
Because they both come to the same place, which is just mind. Because of your practice and your sincerity in the practice, you realize that whether one uses illumination or one uses the hua to at a when the practice is matured, there's no difference. So sometimes I would say when I was where you were at right now, all I'd have to do is instead of saying who is reciting the Buddha's name, you just go who, and then later just who, and then later nothing. And it would be the same as illumination, because simply you will just keep returning the mind to its original source. And in the original source, it functions perfectly. And so it's looking at these little vestiges of who, which are really on the other side, on the samsaric side, but it takes it nowhere, because as you were talking about, is that it brings you back to the hua to before the word. So all the time, there's no continuation of thought. It is just boom, and then you're back to whatever your function is. So this is a natural progression in the practice. It's good, and it indicates that you in your daily life are applying the practice in a proper way. And so naturally, the practice will come up. And it was like a while back, I was being taught at night the Dharma. And it wasn't that there was somebody that was teaching me. Later on, I found out, I think it was Master Shen Yen, that was saying, your own mind, you yourself will teach yourself, the things that you know. And because your mind is very calm, it will bring all of this to a clarity in that moment. And there's no difference between a sleep state and let's say a conscious state in terms of the practice. The practice continues irregardless. And so with you and you're functioning and you're doing something, there's no difference. There's the practice that's there. And so it's coming up and it's bringing it up, but you're not interfering with it. You're not messing with it. If you begin to mess with it and start looking into it, you will lose that state. But if you just keep going back as if it's a hua to, coming back to the mind, coming back to mind in the present moment, jump.
Yeah,
You
jump.
really need to jump. I wish I was there. I'd push you through the plane, door so you could jump, whether you have a parachute or not. But this is the time. Okay, good.
Thank
It's
you.
very, very good. Did you have a follow-up of that?
Pardon?
Did you have any comments or other question? Because
Oh,
this is important where you're at.
follow that it's something that the Hua To Hu or anything is something I refer back to the here and now. So I illuminate the state of the mind, the current state of the mind.
Quite so. And then you just stay with that. Just stay and stay and stay with that. Even that, Lena, will disappear. And then it'll just be the mind.
Okay.
It'll just be that way. That's why I say right now is probably the best time. If you find the way to be able to make that final jump, you will be very surprised. Even the realizations and awakenings you had before, you're right there.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Next one, Simon.
Hi, Gilbert.
Hello.
I want to go back to your example about the relationships and spouse and just sort of accepting situation. So how do you do that? Like, let's say you're in a difficult relationship in some way or another, and you try to work with that person, you try to accept them for who they are. How do you do that while also setting boundaries for yourself in a way that your stuff isn't sort of propelling the boundaries? Or how do you set boundaries without being attached with your own stuff, I guess?
It's really interesting, Simon. And what I love about groups like this is we have the practitioners that have some advanced things that they're dealing with, and having that opportunity to be able to talk to them about that, but also talking to you on a practical basis in terms of things that pertain to our daily life. I think that's just as important as helping the advanced. The only thing is, most of the time, the advanced people don't have a place to come to. And likewise with you, you're looking at it and you're trying to figure out, how do I make sense of this? It's kind of like one of those, how can you soar like an eagle when you're surrounded by turkeys, and when you're looking at the world, it's not always easy to do that. There was a saying of this one master that he was talking to this one young monk that was going to go to the forest to do a biguan, a solitary retreat. And he asked him, why are you going to the forest? And he says, there's too much noise here. There's too much hustle and bustle. So he said, I'm going to go to the forest. And the master said, when you go to the forest, the bubbling of the creek, the rustle of the wind, the chirping of the chipmunks will bother you there. And so the thing is that what you have to do is understand that cause and conditions, there are many things that will arise in your life. And we don't necessarily throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I'm telling you from a personal point of view, don't think that it's all the other person's fault. A lot of times when I see people, they get rid of one relationship to go into another relationship and then make the same mistakes. I had once an employee that married a person that looked exactly like her previous husband. And it was like she was changing a bad tube and putting a good tube in. And he looked identical, not brother-like, identical, like a twin. And, I don't know what happened there, but I mean, we have to look at this. And I know when I'm saying that about Master Sheng Yen, there's people in relationships that might look at it and go, well, I don't quite understand this. But you have to use your patience and your wisdom and your compassion and you have to look at it and try to salvage what you can. At some point, as I'd mentioned, if it was a destructive relationship where somebody is a victim of verbal or extreme psychological abuse, then that's not a healthy situation. But we don't look at it and say, I'm not happy anymore. This person's not giving me what they were giving me 6 months ago or distant. We have to look at this and see, all the different ways that a relationship can be repaired, and really try to do that. It's not easy, because people, as they get older, they can get into fights, and they can be nasty fights. And so you look at it and say, is this my beautiful life? Is this my beautiful wife, or whoever? And you're frustrated with it, but you have to make a go of it. Okay. If you don't, what happens is that if you go to another relationship, you bring all of that baggage with you, and the karma follows you. And so it's better to try to save it if you can, and deal with the people, whatever the relationship is that's there. Try to salvage it, and if you can, fine. If you can't, then the wisdom that maybe you might be better off by yourself. But you don't use that as your default choice. You really try your best to stay in a relationship. It's not easy. It's a lot easier just to throw it out. Boom, I'm gone. Or the other person will say, I'm gone. But this is not the solution. You have to endure and understand. Probably the most important thing in a relationship is that no one is perfect, and you don't try to hold them to that standard of perfection, and so you try to do that, do your best. Okay. So hopefully that helped you.
All right, next one is Miranda.
Miranda.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Gilbert. You definitely played my Sharona tune to a different arrangement. Thank you very much. So hopefully one day I'll be able to do that. Anyway, I'll just keep practicing. My question has to do with the point from illumination, the point where we have illumination, the point where things fall off naturally, but between where that period, I sometimes feel like there's a tendency to be really attached and sort of be in an ambivalent kind of situation of, okay, I've illuminated now. It shouldn't be attached to it, shouldn't be attached to it. Let's say in the example of being in, when I'm in an angry situation, I'm in anger. I recognize I'm angry. Now, I know eventually that this anger will go. However, during this time, I'm like really furious. So how would I be able to let my mind manage that? Bring it to the point where we go, okay, you've acknowledged it, you've illuminated it, okay, just let it go. Just let it go.
You don't indulge in those spikes of emotions. It doesn't mean that you have to be a zombie or dead, with things. But you try to smooth those out little by little. Because those spikes of emotions will, will end up having you make bad decisions, and you may go home and you go, how did I buy this gaudy purse, or how did this happen? Whatever it is, those emotions, or why did I say that to that person? So what we do is that we become aware when we're losing it. Okay, this is not the easiest thing to do, and believe it or not, what I do, I would say 99.9%. There's exceptions, but what I do is that when I feel like I'm losing it, I began to recite Omitofu and bring my mind back. Omitofu, 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 Omitofu. So that at that point, you know, it's kind of like what the Christians would say, what would Jesus say, or what would Jesus do in this moment? So if you have Jesus there, you know, and you're going, Jesus Christ, I can't believe you did such and such, you know, oh, sorry, Jesus, I didn't know you were there, you know. And the same thing here, if you put your mind on the recitation to calm you down, then you realize that you're calming yourself down. Now this becomes the new norm for you. When you feel the spike of emotion, rather than indulge in the emotion, you go to the practice, because it will remind you about that, and then you can bring yourself back down. And then it is again that you don't, you know, you often regret what you said, but you rarely regret what you didn't say. And so when you understand it in this way, it smooths things out. It's not always easy to do that. It's not, you know, but it makes it a lot better. You have to endure and have patience. Remember, that's a paramita, is to have patience. And so the more the patience you have, the easier the life becomes for you. Okay, it makes it so much more easier if you have patience, and you know, and you understand that people have their problems, but that's their problem, not your problem. So you don't make it yours. Okay, try that. I'm sure it's going to help you. Okay, you're just, you know, you're just in samsara, so that those things are naturally happening to you, but you can let it go. You know, it will work. Okay. Okay, Angela, I think, was next. She's up there. And Angela, you have so many different phantoms appearing around you. Who are all those people?
Multiple beings. My mother is here with me today. So
okay.
Thank you so much, Gilbert, for the amazing lesson. I have a question around what you mentioned about passionate thoughts and illuminating them. Could you give an example of like what that looks like? What is a passionate thought? And what is the process of illuminating those passionate thoughts?
What we do is we realize the most important thing, and this is what the admonitions of the masters, ancient masters, have said, is that the crime is not in a thought arising in mind, because the thoughts arise in mind naturally in accordance with habitual patterns. The crime is not noticing that those thoughts have arisen. And so when we don't notice that the thoughts have arisen, we're 2 steps behind, because then we have to catch up and then realize that that thought now has attached to it an akusala thought, which is some kind of an additional vexing thought or discriminating thought. So when you look at it, for instance, and if I was going to go to a night market in Taiwan, and I smell stinky tofu, hacho, you know, hacho, like right away, because before I'm able to catch that, I already have formulated the idea of the smell. And I remember going to a night market there and attaching so much to that smell that it made me miserable. But the people around me were going, oh, where's the stand? I want to go to the stand to buy it. And I'm going like, no, because I was so far behind in seeing that, instead of going, okay, it's the smell, diffuse the smell. I don't have to attach to the smell. It wasn't that the stinky tofu was so bad to the smell, although it's pretty bad to me, but I'm getting better at it. But the thing is that it was the attachment that amplified that. And so when we do that, we become more and more aware of the present moment. In the present moment, we see that those things are arising, these passions and these attaching thoughts, and we just let them go. We let them go. When we let them go, a wonderful thing happens, is that it neutralizes, because the mind is returned to like where Lena's mind was in, what we call upika, the state of equanimity. And so in this upika, the mind is very, very stable. And so as these thoughts come up and you go, yes, I know, Gilbert, in the past, you really hated the smell of stinky tofu. You couldn't stand it. But for today, let's play like we don't, ignore it, and we just realize it's there in the environment. It's natural because you're in Taiwan, you're at a night market, and the people love that. Let it go, because it can be that bad. If people eat it and people enjoy that, then it's your discrimination, not their discrimination, that's causing this. And so when you see this in you, it helps you, because whenever you're around people who are really annoying or whatever, you let it go. You just realize, you have pity for them, that they're so annoying that they're that way. And one of the things that's helped me a lot, especially lately, is in my evening blessings. And believe me, I end up blessing the entire world and universe and whatever, I'm going, okay, go to sleep already. But I also include people from my past or my present that are causing me harm or intend to cause me harm, or that before I had negative opinions about. And I bless them as well. And it really helps. It really helps to neutralize that kind of negativity that can arise in the mind that causes resultant habitual patterns in the future. So if you understand this, then you just let it go. Just let it go. Use your patience, and it will work for you. So I'm really happy again, because these are things that are practical that we use in this samsaric world, and they help us to practice right. Once you see that and you see how you practice that way, then you have faith. Hey, this works. No, and it will be that way for you. Okay.
So as someone who that's from the person who is judging or discriminating the situation. What if it's someone who is like a spouse to that person, or a boyfriend or a girlfriend to that person, who is discriminatory towards the situation, or a food or stinky tofu or whatever the thing is? How do you not get offended? Is essentially
you want to bring me your husband. So the thing is you just have patience as much as you can. It is not easy, but whenever that comes up in your mind, you say Amitofu, and then you begin to through your own practice begin to cultivate in that person that same practice, by not giving in to those discriminations or anything like that, but just accepting it, understanding that way. And the reason I was saying about the one husband, because I've had that too, where people come and say, I want you to help me with my husband. And then, how long has he been doing this? All the time I've known him. Well, all the time you've known him, it's not like I'm going to go like this and change him like with a magic wand. But little by little, people can change. But you have to set about to change the environment that you're in, the mind environment, to not allow those things to happen to there. And that's important. I'll tell you a very, very quick story. I had one person that was telling me that her husband knew all the buttons to push. You're ugly, you're fat, you're sloppy, you're dirty, you're this, you're that. So I said to her, you know what these are? And I had her list them all. And I said, every time he does that, just smile. And so she went home, and her husband was in this pattern of going through all of the things, the little buttons. And she, every time he hit a button, she recognized that he was hitting the button. Yeah, there it is. There it is again. And before, those buttons would immediately cause her to get angry. By the end of the evening, he was so frustrated. And he says, why aren't you yelling at me? What? Why aren't you yelling at me? You know? And he was so frustrated because none of the buttons worked anymore. He just kept pushing them, but they didn't work because she diffused it. It was her choice to do that. You see? So let go. Let go. Don't let those buttons diffuse the buttons. Okay?
All right.
They don't work anymore.
All right. Thanks.
So much.
Thank
you.
you.
All right.
Are we through then, Jack?
Yes. So we probably, can you let us to transfer the marrow?
Yeah, all right, we'll do that. Let us all transfer merit to all of those today that are engaged in the Dharma or to be engaged. May their practice strengthen, may their faith strengthen, may they lead others to awakening of the mind. May all of the merit that we've gained here from speaking and from listening be transferred to all of those in the future to bring more and more people to Buddha Dharma, and so that they can be free from suffering and realize liberation. Amitofo.